For years, Canada has been stuck in a familiar position, answering, reacting, and adjusting every time Washington sneezed. Whenever the White House changed its mood, Canada's economy felt the chill. Whenever U.S. tariffs dropped out of the sky, Canadian workers absorbed the shock. And whenever Donald Trump decided to pull the trigger on a new demand, every microphone in Ottawa turned toward one question: how will Canada respond? But this time, something different happened. At a press conference filled with sharp questions, pointed angles, and reporters hungry for conflict, Prime Minister Mark Carney walked into the room with the calm of a man who had already done the math. Within minutes, a U.S. journalist fired a question designed to corner him, trap him, and force him into a headline-worthy clash with Donald Trump. And instead of dodging or panicking, Carney did something Canadians weren't used to seeing. He took control of the room. He tore down the assumptions behind the question, reordered the conversation, and refused to let the story become Canada versus America. What followed next was one of the most viral political moments of the year, a moment where Carney didn't raise his voice, didn't play to the cameras, and didn't attack anyone, yet still ended the exchange with a quiet force that felt louder than any podium-pounding speech. This wasn't just a press conference. This was a shift in how Canada sees itself. The room was packed. Reporters leaned forward, waiting to pounce. Everyone expected the same old defensive Canadian script, the one where ministers tiptoe around U.S. pressure, avoid saying Trump's name too directly, and try not to provoke anything unpredictable. But what happened instead stunned even seasoned political observers. A reporter launched the first strike. "These new measures will affect the U.S. for the first time. Aren't you worried about retaliation?" It was the question everyone knew was coming. A question designed to spark headlines about fear, weakness, and collapse of negotiations. But Carney didn't take the bait. He didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He calmly explained the reality. The adjustments weren't targeted at the U.S. at all. They were global, built on precise calculations, and structured to support Canadian producers, not to provoke a trade war. This was the first hint that Carney wasn't here to play the old game. Instead of defending himself, he reframed the entire conversation. He stripped the drama out of the question, replaced it with hard economics, and revealed something the reporters weren't expecting. Canada was thinking strategically, not emotionally. But the reporters weren't ready to let go. They wanted one thing: a clash with Trump. And they pushed even harder. The next reporter tried a different angle. "If this isn't a message to the United States," they asked, "why choose January 31st? Isn't that pressure on Washington?" This question was more subtle, a trap designed to force Carney into admitting political motives. But once again, he dismantled the entire setup. January 31st wasn't chosen for symbolism. It wasn't chosen to provoke Trump. It wasn't chosen to score domestic political points. It was chosen because that's how long Canadian companies would realistically need to ramp up production and take advantage of the new space in the market. Contracts exist. Supply chains take time. Industries can't flip a switch instantly. But wait too long, and the opportunity disappears. This wasn't a threat. It was a timetable. Behind the scenes, industry analysts say something else is happening. Canada is quietly repositioning its manufacturing backbone after years of being whiplashed by American tariff chaos. Rumors have circulated that multiple Canadian steel producers lobbied for quicker action, fearing U.S. instability could ruin their long-term planning. Whether those rumors are true or not, one thing was clear: Canada wasn't building policy around Washington's emotions. And when the conversation shifted to China, the tension in the room doubled. A new voice jumped in, sharper than the rest. "Aren't you afraid of China retaliating?" For decades, any Canadian leader would have paused here. China's economic weight is enormous, and a single miscalculated sentence can trigger diplomatic storms. But Carney didn't backpedal. didn't soften, and didn't show worry. Instead, he revealed something surprising. Canada was re-engaging with China in multiple sectors: lumber, seafood, agriculture, clean energy, trade frameworks. The relationship wasn't collapsing, it was being rebuilt. He explained that the global steel market was being reshaped by massive tariff shifts in the US and EU. Countries were scrambling to rebalance supply chains. Canada wasn't the outlier. It was responding to a world where everyone was redesigning their industrial strategy. For a moment, the room fell quieter. This wasn't the Carney they expected. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't looking for backup from America. He spoke like a leader whose country had options, real options. But the silence didn't last long. The reporters were circling the question they truly wanted, and they finally asked it. This was the moment everyone was waiting for. You mentioned you spoke to Donald Trump in the last 24 hours. Can you elaborate? Was it about the tariffs? Every microphone leaned forward. Every journalist sharpened their ears. This was the chance to build a headline, to turn a technical economic announcement into a political bombshell. But Carney's answer was colder, quieter, and sharper than anyone expected. It wasn't newsworthy. The room froze. It was a stunning reply. Not rude, not dramatic, but deeply, almost painfully dismissive. In a single sentence, Carney told the world that his conversation with Trump didn't matter enough for public attention. For a political figure who once dominated every global headline, this kind of dismissal felt like a tectonic shift. Rumors exploded instantly online. Some posts claimed Trump demanded Canada reverse the steel changes. Others speculated Carney refused to negotiate unless certain U.S. tariffs were lifted. A few claimed the call was tense or heated. None of it confirmed, but the speculation fueled millions of views. But the real shock wasn't Carney's words. It was what happened next. A reporter snapped back. A rare challenge, a push against a sitting prime minister. "That's for us to decide," the reporter shot back, implying the media, not Carney, would determine what mattered. The room felt electric for a second, a tension between political authority and media power. But Carney didn't react, no frustration, no escalation, no panic. He simply moved on. In that moment, something symbolic happened. Canada watched a leader who refused to be baited into conflict, not by Trump, not by Washington, and not by his own media. Across social media, Canadians called it a spine moment. Americans called it arrogant. Political analysts called it calculated neutrality. But whatever label people used, the conclusion was the same. Carney didn't need to win the argument. He controlled the room without trying. And what came after that calm moment revealed just how big this policy shift really was. While the media obsessed over Trump, they almost missed the biggest point Carney made that afternoon. A single detail buried inside his technical explanation lit up economic analysts across the country. The new policy unlocked a potential $10 billion market share for Canadian producers. Not $10 million, not $100 million, $10 billion. And the way Carney framed it was even more significant. He didn't call it a defensive move. He didn't say Canada was protecting itself from U.S. tariffs. He described it as an opportunity, a chance for Canadian producers to step into a supply vacuum left behind by global tariff realignments. Countries across the EU were tightening controls. The U.S. was reshuffling quotas and imposing new steel derivative restrictions. Supply chains were shifting. Markets were destabilizing. And in the chaos, Carney identified the one thing every successful economy needs: space to grow. This wasn't improvisation. It wasn't a reaction. It wasn't panic. This was strategy. Industry insiders say some Canadian firms had been begging Ottawa for a bolder approach for years. Every time the US changed its rules, Canadian factories suffered. Every time Trump flipped another tariff switch, entire supply lines collapsed overnight. Companies needed predictability, and Carney finally gave it to them. Some analysts believe this was Carney's quiet way of preparing Canada for something even bigger, the possibility of a long-term breakdown in US-Canada trade predictability. Others think he's betting on Europe becoming Canada's largest industrial partner by 2030. Nothing confirmed, but the pattern is hard to ignore. This wasn't a press conference about tariffs. It was Carney announcing that Canada was done waiting for permission to succeed. And someone in the room picked up on that, because the next question zeroed in on something that surprised even the reporters. A journalist asked what many were whispering. Why weren't these measures in the federal budget? Did your earlier quotas fail? Carney's answer revealed a truth that most Canadians never hear directly from their leaders. The world is changing too fast for static budgets. He explained that new U.S. tariffs, European restrictions, and global steel rebalancing forced Canada to act quickly, far quicker than traditional budget cycles allow. The old world of 5-year plans and predictable trade environments is gone. Countries are adjusting policy month by month, not year by year. Behind this technical answer was something bigger. Carney was acknowledging openly that Canada needed to be lighter on its feet, faster in its responses, and more reliable to its own industries. And then came the unspoken part, the one analysts whispered about afterward. Some government insiders believe Carney pushed for these measures personally, overruling more cautious voices inside the bureaucracy. The timing, the structure, and the rapid rollout all felt like Carney's fingerprints. Whether those behind-the-scenes rumors are true or not, the message Carney delivered publicly was unmistakable. Canada wasn't building a policy to survive last year. It was building a policy to dominate the next decade. And with that, the press conference revealed the deeper truth everyone felt but didn't fully understand, until Carney's final answer brought it all into focus. As the final questions wrapped up, something became clear. Something bigger than steel, tariffs, or trade deals. Carney wasn't angry. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't pleading with Washington to return to the table. He simply stated, "We are ready to re-engage when the United States wants to re-engage." A sentence that quietly said everything. For decades, Canada had been the country waiting by the phone, adjusting itself to U.S. moods. Now, Carney said, without saying, that Canada would move forward whether Washington was ready or not. The U.S. could join the conversation whenever it felt prepared. Canada wasn't pausing its economic future anymore. Social media erupted. Some called it confidence, others called it a warning shot. But the meaning was unmistakable. This is a new Canada, a Canada that builds, grows, and negotiates from strength, a Canada that doesn't bow to pressure. The viral moment wasn't just the shutdown of a tough Trump question. It was the transformation happening underneath it, the birth of a nation that finally realized its own weight. When the clip ended, the story traveled around the world, not because Carney attacked Trump, but because he didn't need to. He didn't yell. He didn't posture. He didn't give reporters the spectacle they wanted. Instead, he demonstrated something far more powerful. Canada has stopped asking for permission to shape its own destiny. And in a world where economic storms are hitting every continent, where tariffs rise and fall like tides, and where global alliances shift overnight, that single message may be the most important move Canada has made in decades.